Fragged Empire. And I'm here with Wade Dyer. Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I have a tendency of only getting the names of my guests right on the third, fourth time. Okay, Wade, so you live in Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I've been instructed by my friends to not use too much Australian lingo, but, you know, we'll see how we go.
You are 13 hours ahead of me. That's weird.
Yeah. I'm out of time sync with everybody except for China. Yeah.
You are about to release a Kickstarter
for
a tabletop role-playing game called Fragged Empire, which is science fiction, something that I love, and I had to talk to you about it. And one of the things I liked about the game, of course, the pictures are gorgeous. The website is great, but it should be because you work professionally as a website creator, right?
Yeah, that's true. So if I got to do that bit, it's going to be done right.
And it's a post-apocalyptic setting. What is it? What does it mean? It's after the apocalypse? After the apocalypse?
Yeah, that's right. So I really love post-apocalyptic settings because they're a real staple of science fiction literature. They allow us to sort of explore what is humanity like when you get rid of everything. You get rid of the status quo, and people really have to struggle to get by. The reason I've got post-apocalyptic, I know it's a little bit of an awkward phrase, but my setting for this book is set 100 years after the big apocalyptic event. And so in this instance, that apocalyptic event was a genocidal war, which just killed everybody in the galaxy except for a few survivors. And they descended into sort of this brutal tribalism for about 100 years. And the setting is actually set right at the end of that. So you've got these people are just rediscovering space travel. They're just reforming society. So it's kind of at that cusp of the point between the post-apocalyptic to a more civilized age. I hope that explains it.
I think I got the idea. So it's not set on Earth. It's set on a galaxy that has been colonized by humans, but now we have genetic enhanced, anything.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe it might be worth me to give you a bit of a quick rundown of the history.
Sure.
So it's set roughly about 10,000 years in the future. We don't really know for sure. Humanity is long dead. So there's no humans in this setting. So humans expanded throughout the galaxy. Then they kind of became apathetic. And their genetic information started to erode. It's called genetic erosion. And they were slowly going extinct. So to replace themselves, they genetically engineered a race called the Archons. Okay? Mm-hmm. So then the Archons inherited this empty empire. But so the Archons, rather than really focusing on re-exploring that empire or following in their creators' footsteps, the Archons started doing a lot of genetic engineering, and they started making lots of races in this effort to try and make the perfect race. So after a couple of thousand years of this, making lots of races, they thought they'd made the perfect race. And they called this race the Exion. Then they sort of squabbled amongst themselves a bit. They're like, is this perfect? What even is perfection? Is it even achievable? So they tried to remove that title from their creations. The creation wasn't very happy about this, and a fight broke out. So the Archons killed all of the Exion except for one. This one escaped and sort of flew off into uncharted space. A couple hundred years later, Exion returned, and he came back with a massive army. And this army was called the Nephilim. Started a big war. The war lasted 6 years. So it's not so much a war, pretty much just a slaughter. Then when the last Archon was killed, Exion just left. He abandoned his own creations. So that's that big cataclysmic war I was talking about. Then you got 100 years later, and you've got 4 races have re-emerged in one solar system, and they're banding together not so much because they want to or they like each other, but because they need to. Sort of some core themes of this that I really want to explore is, that post-apocalyptic type setting, but also cultural tension and genetic engineering. There's some big central themes in this one, these 4 races, and how do they get along.
Those are the 4 playable races.
Yeah, they are. So none of these races are humans. You've got the corporation. They are a race that was created by the Archons, but the Archons rejected them as inferior. So the corporation has rejected their birth name, and they've embraced capitalism. They're all about the individual, You're not born with any rights. It's not about what you are. It's who you are and what you achieve as an individual. The second race we got is the Kaltorans. Now the Kaltorans, they got dreadlocks, they got 4 ears. They're a bit more post-apocalyptic in how they dress. A lot of vests and stuff like that. And the Kaltorans, they have genetic memories, so they can remember their ancestors, what they remember partially. So the new Kaltorans, they're born with the memories of the war, plus the memories of that 100 years it took to survive. So they did a lot of cannibalism and stuff like that. So they've got some real horrible stuff bouncing around in their heads, but they really want a clean slate, It's kind of got that internal tension happening with them.
The Kaltorans are the ones with the preview on the website right now.
Yeah. So it's one of the big pictures they got with the blue sky. They got that cool-looking chick with the gun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's the Kaltoran.
What else have you got?
So the third race I've got is called the Legion. Now the Legion were also created by the Archons, but they were made to fight the war. They were made to fight Exion and his army. And so when the war happened, eventually the Archons died, but the Legion kept fighting. They never consider themselves to have lost the war. 100 years later, they're now struggling to exist as a society because they were built to be warriors. Everyone wants to be a warrior. No one wants to be a mom or a dad or a plumber or an accountant. They all want to grab guns and go kill monsters. So they got that sort of trouble with them. Then the 4th race, this is the Nephilim. The Nephilim are actually Exion's army, the leftovers. So when Exion left and he abandoned his army sort of fell apart, and eventually over 100 years, they sort of need to rebuild a society for themselves. So they're actually the race that killed the ancestors of all the other races.
They look a little like cyborgs.
Yeah. So they're really diverse in their appearance. You can have anything from tiny little ones to more human-looking ones to massive big monsters. They're quite varied. And as a race, they're probably the most brutal. They're kind of the ends always justifies the means. But you kind of put these 4 races together. They're in one solar system. They're kind of getting along. They have to, otherwise they know they're going to die. They need each other. Yeah.
The game is right now in public beta testing, right? You've been beta testing it.
Yeah, so I've been beta testing it for a while now. I mean, we've been doing in-house beta testing for probably a couple of years. I've been working on this project for a few years, but we've kind of been wrapping that up a bit as I'm getting closer to the Kickstarter because I need to focus myself. But after the Kickstarter, the rules are written. And after the Kickstarter, I'm going to put it out there, who wants to actually help me polish up these rules, play test it. And so even though the book won't be available straight after the Kickstarter, the rules will be.
All right. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the rules, for what you have already released on the website, I see the system is pretty straightforward. It's a roll 3d6. It's 3d6 roll under. Is it correct?
So no, it's always roll higher.
Roll higher.
Yeah, which statistically, that's pretty much the same sort of thing. I love my bell curves. 3d6 are good for bell curves.
But you say the system is the rules are adaptable, and the system is, the idea is to be like, would you say that the system you're developing is for the kind of game that you don't even realize there's a rule system, or the system is like, how much thought have you been putting on the rules, the system specifically? What kind of game when I'm going to see? Is it going to be system heavy? Is it going to be system light? Is it going to be narrative? Let's put your game in a box.
Yeah. It's always a bit tricky with RPGs because there's so many different types. And so many different areas. I definitely think for mine, it does lean towards the slightly crunchy side.
My favorite kind of crunch.
Yeah. Well, my idea is that I don't want any referencing of the book. So on your character sheet should have everything. But it is a little bit crunchy. There's sort of that stuff for tactical combat is a reasonable chunk of the rules for people who like that kind of stuff. For the more non-combat stuff, I've tried to keep it light. I've tried to make it so it's fast, a little bit easy to do, and familiar, because that's when you get a lot of the role-playing. And I don't want to get too much dice rolling getting in the way of that.
But when combat starts, I can even use miniatures.
Yeah. So I'm a bit of a fan of miniatures. I like moving around the grids. I like that side of it. So yes, I encourage the use of miniatures. There are going to be some rules for non-miniature combat. Let's just say your party gets involved in a pub brawl, and the GM doesn't want to put out miniatures just for a bit of a fist fight. There's some rules for that, so it's done a bit quicker, a bit lighter, for less serious fights.
And you say that the combat's going to be intuitive. What do you mean by that?
Well, the way that I'm hoping for it to work, and this way it's working in playtesting, but I'm really curious I always get really interested when people who don't know me pick up my rules and read it and see how they go, like in D&D, you got that massive big list of spells? Mm-hmm. Nothing like that. Okay? Nothing like that. For this, you've got a gun, you've got a bunch of different actions you can take, and then it's up to you to try and figure out combinations that work together. So it's kind of like, here's the pieces. Let's say you've got 8 different options. You can pick 2 of them. You pick the 2 that match that situation. Yeah. I hope that kind of helps. It's a little bit hard to explain, but yeah.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing I think when you have because on the Kickstarter you're also going to have beta testing. So I think,
yeah.
But is it going to be any different than the beta testing you're having right now?
A little bit. I think because I released the more public beta test about, I think it's got to be about 8 months ago. And I've polished up the rules from then. So it's kind of like each additional phase of beta testing is better and more polished than the previous one. So hopefully, it'll be a lot neater once the Kickstarter launches,
I can only imagine the process because I've never written my own games. I am 100% consumer. I never had any interest in creating my own scenarios, my own settings. I like to use what people that are better than me are doing. And maybe if I tweak them sometimes. I have no idea the kind of pains that the process of beta testing. You have an idea, you think it works, but you're not sure. So you send it out to the world or to some selected people. And they come back with criticism, basically. And you have to take it in.
I was talking to a friend about this a little while ago, actually, and I said, if I had have known back when I was starting this project of how much effort it would have taken to do it, I would never have even started. But I'm kind of glad I didn't know because it's actually good. Like I've kind of got to this point where, it's pretty much all together, and I'm really proud of what's been made by myself and the others involved in this. But you definitely don't want to get too precious. So as my job as a graphic designer, a big thing that I do is bringing other people's projects to life. People come to me with a book or they're starting a business or they want to do something else, then I kind of make that a reality. And it's been really helpful to bring those skills to my own personal project. Not getting precious when people bring criticism, being able to analyze people's responses and what they give to you, and because you can't take everything on board, but you should listen to everything. And that's been a really interesting process, actually, especially since it's been spanning over so many years.
Fragged Empire is not going to be necessarily a action-oriented game, in spite of the name. Because you just described me that there is tension between those four peoples, and even amongst them. So if I have those people like you said, on the same star system, they'll have to tolerate each other. But it doesn't mean that's not going to be cultural tension. So I can have dramatic games if I want, if I so choose. And you described a galaxy that has been colonized and warred over for thousands of years, which means that's gonna be quite a lot of ruins out there.
Yeah, so that's something that I really sort of wanted to focus on when I was putting this thing together, was what is my focus going to be? And I think in terms of setting, genetic engineering, cultural tension, exploration are really the sort of three central themes that I want to do. I've purposefully not filled in the map completely. I really want GMs to come up with stuff. So I've got some areas I map out well, write lots of ideas and stories for, but whole solar systems I haven't even given a name to. I want GMs to come up with that stuff. I want to leave a lot of room still. Yeah.
About character development, what's the kind of game that you are creating? Is it like I'm going to have races and classes and character level, or is it going to be something more subtle like, I don't know, Savage Worlds or storytelling?
Okay, so in this one, there is levels, no classes though, and you pick a race. But your level is not everything. It's not the be-all and end-all. You actually advance in a few different ways. So when you advance with your level, every 3 sessions, you go up a level. And what happens is then you select like a trait or an ability or a skill, a little bit of learning that you've done. The next way you advance is actually in your resources. Now, that represents how wealthy you are and how much upkeep you can maintain, like how good your equipment is. The third way is your influence, how much NPCs like you and how much you're actually invested in your setting. You can actually have games that emphasize different ones of these. For example, if you were doing like a Star Trek style game where you've got massive spaceships with lots of crew, but you're running around with little pistols and no armor, then you would have a really high influence and a high level, but a really low resources. Or if you're playing like a real space commando type game, you would actually have like a high resource, high level type game, but maybe not much influence. You have a different styles of games by like tweaking those different ways you advance.
That is very cool, which means I can use your, even if I don't use the setting you're creating, I can use the rules for my own kind of game. And even if I like the setting, I have been known to buy games because of the settings and not because of the rules.
Yeah. There's a lot of people out there who just really like collecting RPG books. And I think that's really cool. Like, I really like that. I don't want people to play this game exactly my way. I don't want that. I want some people to like, they may really like the setting, they may really like the rules, maybe they'll take both. I mean, obviously, the rules are designed for the setting. You know, there is a lot of synergy there. I've got a lot of stuff for exploration and cultural tension in the rules, but you don't have to. You can grab your own, like, maybe you really like the Fate system and you like the setting, just adapt the setting to the Fate rules. Those nice generic systems are good for that.
And the GM will be able to choose what style of game he or she wants. So, how easy are you making for the GM? What can the GM expect from reading your game?
Okay, so I've really done a few things to really help the GM. So one thing that I've got in this is I'm a bit of a fan of sort of long sandbox games. And a problem with some of those games is actually player motivation. Your players just too many choices. You chuck them in a space station and say, go. They're like, okay, what is there to do? And I've built in rules for players can go and do like merchant trading or research, and they do these different stuff. And that kind of gives them a bit of motivation. There's some rules there in things that they can do to advance themselves. They don't have to wait for the GM to give them that information or to give them a mission. I really want the rules there for the players can set their own missions if they want. Also for the GM, like my GM's guide is actually reasonably small in my book, mostly because there's actually just not a lot of there that is exclusive for the GM. There's a bunch of example monsters. Here's how to make bad guys. Here's how to sort of deal with rewarding players and sort of environmental effects. But other than that, yeah, it's. I'm trying to make it as easy on the GM as possible.
The few pictures, the few illustrations you have available on the official website of Fragged Empire, they're stunning. They're beautiful. They're clean. They're crisp. They're brilliant. But they also convey the idea that this is an old universe. Who did those pictures for you?
So we've actually got there's about 9 sort of pieces that I've sort of released to the public. I've got another 20 sitting on my computer, and that's kind of growing steadily. There's a couple of artists that I'm using. I'm going to bring up their names just to make sure I pronounce them correctly. Otherwise, they'll really have a go at me. So the principal artist that I've got, his name is Cloner Kimuru. Oh, I cannot even pronounce his name. That's terrible. I just call him Clone Her. And he's a fantastic artist, and he's done my main characters and my front cover of my book. He was just a dream to work with. I saw his style and sort of got talking to him, and he's done a fantastic job. Another artist that I've got who's done sort of the spaceship stuff, his name is Fyodor. So you can even see him. He goes by the name of Ted-MX on DeviantArt. I've got another bunch of fantastic artists. I could just keep rattling off about them.
So Wade, can you tell me something about the actual writing of the book?
Yeah, so apart from the rules, we've got a lot of settings. So over half of the book is going to be setting. Like, apart from the gorgeous artwork, which is really easy for people to see, there's a lot of stories in there. I very purposefully tried to make the writing not so much just a exposition of here's what's happened, but I'm telling it all through short stories. So, for example, when I talk about the history of the setting, it's actually going to be people talking together. And that's really important because it gives you an idea of the perceptions. You grab a person like from each of the races and ask them about this same topic, like history, they're going to give you 4 different stories and 4 different takes on it. And I really wanted to sort of share that idea of perception and to really emphasize the sort of cultural quirks of the playable races.
You're doing all those work. You're doing all that work alone. The process of writing is 100% Wade Dyer.
No, it's not quite 100% me. So I'm also aware that I'm very much a visual person. And that's where my strengths lie. So I'm writing about a quarter of the setting, and I've got some very good writers who've come on board and helping me to really flesh it out. And I've been working with them to sort of keep the direction consistent, but I really want some different people to have some different styles of writing. So some of the short stories, they'll read a little bit different. Like some are really gritty, and some a bit more fun, sort of a bit of a space adventure, easier read. So if you actually go on my website, you can see an example short story right there. Yeah.
Oh, right here, playable races and a short story.
Yeah.
All right.
And hopefully that gives people an idea of what's going to be in the book.
Cool. Why did you decide to write your own role-playing game?
I think way back in the day, my friends and I kind of got to this point in our role-playing that a few of us really enjoy rules side of it in terms of creating rules. We made a few homebrew sort of settings. I ended up designing a couple of different games. I had a fantasy game before I had this one. There was something about this particular setting and some of the rules that I'd come up with that really resonated with me. They started resonating with other people. And I thought, hey, I think I've got something here. Then Kickstarter came to Australia. And I'm like, that was about last year. Kickstarter announced that. And I'm like, that's it. There's actually a chance. I think I could actually do this. So It's kind of a mixture of a little bit of opportunity, a little bit of good luck. I just happen to be doing this. I got the ability, so I've got the sort of skills I needed. I know a lot of really creative people who could help me make this project a reality. So it's a real mixture of stuff.
What do you like most about games?
I think I really enjoy the social exploration part of it. I enjoy it when you've got a bunch of friends together, just sitting around a table, coming up with stories, and everyone's sort of take on it's different, you know? Role-playing games are so multidisciplinary. There's so much room for different types of players, different types of GMs, and I really just enjoy seeing what different people do. Like, you can give my rule system, like Fragged Empire, to 3 different groups, and each group will actually have their own little take on it. One group really does a lot of non-combat, political type stuff. Another one's really combat heavy. Another one's really gets into spacecraft combat. They like the science of it. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy seeing what different people do with it and how they interact with each other. I'm a social person by nature, and I really enjoy stories, and so probably those things.
What were your inspirations? What was rattling around in your head? Like games, books, movies, comic books, while you were thinking, while you were writing your game?
I think a lot of stuff that's been rattling around my head, and I've listed these on my website to sort of help people. So I really love Firefly. I really love the Millennium Falcon sort of scenes from Star Wars. I love the Alien movies, Farscape, Blake 7, Mass Effect, and Knights of the Old Republic. So sort of movies and computer games really sort of bouncing around. That's probably where my inspiration's coming from a lot more.
Oftentimes, when people decide to design their own rule systems, their own mechanics, they are thinking about, I would like this, but there's no system out there that allows me to do that. And sometimes people say, I'm going to do GURPS the right way.
I think, if my memory's right, I think they're called Heartbreaker games. I think that's the term for it. I can't quite remember.
If it isn't, it is now. It's a good name for that.
My settings, my rule systems are really not one of those. I think for me, I really started with an idea of a style of play that I wanted and emphasize in a couple of things. And I've really been clear about that. Like, one of the things, for example, is me having miniature combat. That's actually a really interesting one, because there's actually a large amount of people that sort of really don't like miniature combat. But of course, there's a large amount that do like it. And I just really want to be upfront. That is this style of rules. It is like that. It's not the perfect system, but I've tried to sort of convey, here's where my emphasis are.
Well, I am one of those that love miniature combat rules.
That's good to hear. But
yeah, I've been trying to, and actually, I gotta play. I have very few opportunities of playing war games. For example, I have a rather large collection of Mech Warrior from WizKids. After they discontinued the series, I went around buying anything I could find.
Oh, wow!
And I have maybe 4 or 5 drawers of miniatures, and I can't get anybody to play with me, because my friends, they like those light games in which you don't have to worry about things like 316 Carnage Amongst the Stars. It's so frustrating.
I think that's like, I grew up with a lot of people, like a lot of my friends really into war games or board games, and they're really different, you know. One's lots of miniatures, and one board game's very neat and clean and tidy. So I do think that RPGs are more towards the board game style. They're not quite that war game type thing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
One thing that I am actually hoping, and this is, I mean, honestly, I really don't know how well the Kickstarter is going to go, but I hope it goes well. If we do go well enough, I'm hoping to get some miniatures produced. So I'm actually working with a 3D artist at the moment to sort of 3D model one of my main characters, like the Nephilim artwork that I've got up, that nice green chick, the little bit cyborg looking. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting a 3D model done of her, and I'm hoping I can get some miniatures made, because that'd be fantastic.
That would be fantastic.
I've got some gorgeous artwork. I'd love to be able to sort of hold it. That'd be cool.
nowadays it's very difficult to see those old black and white, off-white pages, like that you don't care of leaving on the bathroom. Nowadays, RPG books are almost works of art. Those kinds of coffee table books that you want to leave around, so people that come over your house can say, "Oh, that seems a pretty an interesting game. Can we play?" Because of the cover, the quality of the pages. But every now and again, and I find that also refreshing. I don't have any problem with any of both styles. You have games that decide to release soft covers and black and white, so they are affordable. And sometimes we have Kickstarters with both versions, and even PDFs, what I think is great. That kind of art, if you have the PDF on your iPad or anything, any of those gadgets with those really, really high res screens, it seems it's made for this kind of digital era. What kind of format can we expect from the Kickstarter? Do you already have an idea the kind of book you want to put into your supporters' hands?
Yeah. So it's been because this is like a real passion project for me. I haven't I've paid very careful attention to how much all this is costing to try and make it right and to sort of try and give the best value that I can. This is also accentuated by the fact that I live in Australia and postage from here is just not an option. It's really expensive. So I'm actually going to be doing a printed book and a PDF. But the printed book is actually going to be printed over in Europe.
And what can we expect from the book? It's going to be soft cover, but with a stretch goal for hardcover.
Yeah. So the very first one is going to be soft cover, full color. I just don't think this book would work black and white. So I'm going to go straight for color. First stretch goal is going to upgrade the quality of the print, and then to hardcover as soon as possible. Because I really want that. That's my first stretch goals are all about the book. Let's just get the book as good as we can, and then see how we go from there. And for those with sort of a lower budget, the PDF. It's going to be. I think my current idea is going to be about $25 for the PDF, and that's it. You've got the full thing, full 384 pages, straight there.
Today is May 10th. How far are we from the kickstart of the Kickstarter?
So if everything goes to plan, I'm hoping within a month. The two things that I've got to sort out before that, it's a lot of work preparing for a Kickstarter. And I've been really, 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 really lucky. I've been working with Chris Birch from Modifius. I know you've had him on your podcast a couple of times. And I keep just praising Chris, how nice he is. Chris approached me a while ago, and he's going to help me do printing and distribution, which is that's really a big load off my shoulders, because he's very experienced with that, very experienced with Kickstarter, so he knows what he's doing in that regards. So I'm really comfortable with that. Now I'm just getting my Kickstarter video ready. I've got to get it done. I've got to sort of, let people know what I'm doing, because this is a new setting, new book, and no one knows who I am. So once all that's done, about this time next month, I should launch.
Cool. I can barely wait. It seems by the few things you've released, it's going to be beautiful because of the art. I don't think we should worry about the design, because you are a web designer and a designer in general, right?
Yeah. So I've self-published books before, so this is not my first book. I really love, as much as I do a lot of web design, I really love holding a book. I love holding the tactileness of it and just consider what is it like to flick through, and yeah, so a lot of effort into that.
Yeah, I think that's very important for people, because Kickstarter has had its share of botched projects. Yeah. Because of people with not a lot of experience. It's very important to say it. It's not your first book.
Yeah, and I think that's why I really want to team up with some other people. Because as experienced as I am with design and self-publishing, it's really important that I team up with Chris to help me with printing and distribution, because I really want this to go well. And it's looking good, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
So, Fragged Empire is going to be on Kickstarter in about a month, give or take.
Yep.
The official website is fraggedempire.com. You will also have a Google Plus page, Facebook. What else?
I got a mailing list, so if you really don't want to miss the Kickstarter, jump on the mailing list. But, I'll put it up on my social media pages. Everything's on the website. It's all there.
All right. And the link to the website is on the show notes for this episode. Wade, it's been a pleasure talking to you. We can really see that you are excited about your own project, which is always a good sign.
Yes, it is. I mean, even after how long I've been working on this, I'm just getting more excited, especially as it's getting this close.
Thank you very much, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
You've been listening to Channel 2. You can find show notes and contact email at channel2.podcast.com. We're also available through the iTunes Store. Feel free to rate the show and leave a 5-star review. Our theme song, Euphoria, by the Brazilian guitarist Marcos Klein, is used by courtesy of the author. You can find more about him and many other great songs at marcosklein.com.br. Thank you for listening.